Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, welcome again to our wonderful second speaker today, Jackson. I'm just going to run through some quick key learning outcomes that we hope to get from his presentation now. So, to learn how off-grid solar projects generate and certify carbon credits, explore Namin Solar's model for clean, affordable energy access, understand the social, economic, and environmental benefits for communities, and identify challenges and opportunities in scaling carbon-financed solar solutions. So thank you very much, Jackson. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Let me quickly share my screen. Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, maybe just a quick introduction. I know it has already been done. I'm currently the vice chairperson of the Zimbabwe Carbon Association, which is a grouping of carbon project developers here in Zimbabwe. We convened and formed the Zimbabwe Carbon Association in response to regulatory changes and the carbon credit space here in Zimbabwe. So we wanted to have one voice so that we could influence the policies here in Zimbabwe. I think to a greater part, we managed to do that. I was also the country director for Namene Solar here in Zimbabwe. Namene is a project developer in the carbon credit space. So we're implementing a carbon credit project, which was into distribution of solar lights in the rural communities in the off-grid market. So we managed to distribute more than 250,000 solar lights. And through those solar lights, we managed to reach plus or minus 1.1 million people. At some point, we also managed to receive the 2023 Rural Electrification Project of the Year from the Solar Quota. So that is a quick background on who Jackson is and what he has been doing over the last few years. Now, I'll get into the presentation. My presentation will mainly look at two parts, which is how to certify a carbon project and also give a detailed analysis of the Namene carbon project, which I was responsible for here in Zimbabwe. So the first section will look at how to certify a carbon project. I think I don't want to dwell much on this. This has already been covered. I also had one slide on what a carbon credit project is. I think the previous presenter talked about, all the different types of the carbon credits. And from this, you can see that, there are two approaches, one which is carbon reduction and the other one carbon sequestration. But all these methods have the same goal of getting to climate change mitigation. So now I can talk a bit more in detail about the solar lighting project and how we generate a carbon credit from that project. So here the baseline scenario is that when you get into the area, people are using fossil fuel-based lighting products like kerosene candles and kerosene lamps. Here in Zimbabwe, we normally call it paraffin candles. I mean, the paraffin lamps and kerosene candles. These cause carbon emissions, but also they provide light. But also, for you to access these products, you have to use money on a regular basis to buy the candles, to buy the kerosene, to put in your lamp for lighting. But also, these cause a lot of issues, health issues, respiratory issues, but also the quality of the light is not good. It's poor quality lighting. But now, with the project, we introduce now a solar light. Here you see that it's an SM100. I'll talk more about this in the oncoming slides. The project now removes the carbon emissions, because the solar light does not produce any carbon emission, but also it provides light. But this light now is good quality light. And once the family or the household procures a solar light, there is no need for them to keep on pumping in money until after 2 to 5 years. So the benefit from the $4 that they pay for the light for the next 2 to 5 years. So which is also an advantage. So the carbon reduction in this case will now be a carbon credit. I don't want to get into the mechanics of how this is calculated, but that carbon credit for the gold standard, which is the standard where we were implementing the project under, is called a VER, or a verified emission reduction. So for the solar lights that we distributed, one solar lamp reduced carbon emissions by 92 kgs per year. So you would see that you would need plus or minus 11 solar lights to reduce carbon emissions by a ton, or to generate a carbon credit, which is a ton of carbon emission reduction. But you may ask, which carbon standard should I use? I think this has been covered slightly also by Dr. Romain. There are many carbon standards that you can use. There are many carbon registries that you can use, but it depends on your project. I think you talked about invasive species, biochar. There are different kinds of standards for each carbon credit project intervention. So for us, on the solar lighting project that we're implementing, we used the gold standard. You may ask which kind of projects can be certified under the gold standard. Normally, these projects have to comply with very stringent social and environmental safeguards, but also, there is need for extensive consultation, even though this is just an added-on requirement under the gold standard, that there should be extensive stakeholder consultation prior to the certification, to the design certification of the project itself. Even also within the context here in Zimbabwe, with the new climate change management bill, it also is quite strict regulations with regards to community consultations. I think it's also a requirement when you are registering on the Zimbabwe Carbon Registry that you have to present a stakeholder consultation document, which shows that you have consulted all the people that are going to be affected or to participate in the project. But also, you need to quantify, monitor, and report on the project impacts, which will be aligned to different SDGs. You'll find that for the project that I was working on, we were also contributing towards SDG 1, which is no poverty, through a reduction in expenditure on lighting. We're also contributing to climate action, and also even to access to renewable energy, which is SDG 7 and SDG 13. The project also has to be audited by a third party. And these third party VVBs, or verification and validation bodies, are normally registered with the different standards that they are going to certify your project as having made the carbon emission reduction as you claim. But even also at design stage level, they have also to look at your project to make sure that, one, you align to the standard under which your project is going to be, but also to make sure that the proposed actions will produce the proposed reduction according to the methodology that we have chosen. But also, during the implementation of the project, you have to report on any deviations or changes to the original project design. So once this is done, you can now monetize your carbon reduction or sequestration. And later, you can also certify, have your reduction certified after looking also at the contributions to the different SDGs. I think for the gold standard, if I'm not mistaken, you have to have your project contribute to at least 4 SDGs. But the project that we're working on, I think, was contributing to about 7 SDGs. On this slide, I slightly covered the carbon credit certification process from design certification, which is mainly about the project design itself. It has to be certified, and also performance certification. I think I already spoke slightly about the design certification, where this is only done. They are done once, but also it confirms that the project design and the products, they do meet the carbon standard under which, and methodologies under which the project is going to be reviewed or certified. But also this involves auditing by a third party and several site visits. But on the performance certification, this is now when the project is being implemented. There are quite a lot of requirements while you are implementing the project. And, this is recurring, but it depends now on the project proponent when they would want to have some carbon credits or the VERS, the verified emission reduction certified. So you can request a third party, a VVB, to come and certify your project, like on an annual basis or after every 2 years. It depends. Then they will come and certify the project. Send their report to the gold standard. Gold standard will review that. And when they are happy that what you claimed as emission reductions therefore actually happened, then they will certify those emission reductions. During implementation, there are a lot of monitoring requirements, data collection and processes that we have to implement. I will speak about this in a later slide. So this involves third-party auditing. Yes, while you are implementing the project, you can be monitoring and and be looking at your own projects, doing internal reviews. But for certification, you need a third-party verification body. So now for the Namene project, this is the process that we went through when we registered the project, which is the design certification stage, where we had stakeholder consultations and we did the baseline assessments. What is the current state? What sort of lighting systems are being used in the communities? What amount of money are they spending on the lighting systems? And a number of other questions that were answered during the design stage. Then we prepared a documentation where you prepare the stakeholder consultation documentation, then you prepare also the project design document, which is normally called the PDD. Then these were verified by a third party. And the project was reviewed, and the project was reviewed by the third party. It was reviewed later by the gold standard. And then the certification of the project happened so that we could start the project. And this process took between 12 and 18 months. Depending on the project, it can take longer or shorter, depending on the type of project that you're doing. Then on performance certification, now we started doing the solar light distribution and doing monitoring, collecting different kinds of data. But the monitoring period, maybe before your first certification, can be plus or minus 1 year. Third parties, verifiers, they can take plus or minus 2 months. But then for you to get the carbon credits, it can take another 1.5 months. So you can see now that the total duration before your first carbon credit can be more than more than 2 years before you start getting any carbon credit. So you need quite a lot of runway in terms of financing for you to be in a position to continue implementing your project. Okay, so now I want to talk about Namene as a case study. So Namene mainly is into what they call connecting people to the sun. They design their own solar lights, and the solar light that they designed before, which is the SM100, which was later changed to SM200. It received a number of awards because at some point it was the smallest head torch on the market, which was quite ultra affordable. So on the right there is the Namene solar light that I'm talking about, which is kicking out the kerosene lamp on the left. So they have made 3 business areas where these are, the lights, which is, which are the products that we used for the carbon projects, but also they're into power generation in the UK, but also into climate action. So this is the SM200 light. It's a very simple light, very easy to open and repair, and even to replace the battery and also the PCB stuff. So it's a very small light, which is 500 milliamp hours. It also, the panel is a 3.2 volts panel. It comes with a 2-year warranty, but the light can last you, it can last even up to 5 years. The light is also certified by Verisol, which is a certifying body for lighting products. So it's quite a genuine product. So now the lights distribution process, as I said before, it includes stakeholder consultations, but these now are stakeholder consultations at the project implementation stage. Here in Zimbabwe, we have quite a number of layers of consultation that we have to go through. You have to get a letter of support from the Ministry of Energy and Power Development. Then now you go to the provinces, you pitch your project to them, you get clearances at the provincial level, they refer you to the district level, you go there, you pitch your project, you also get a clearance at that stage. After that, you start implementing the project. So we went through all these processes without an hassle for us to be in a position to distribute the lights. But now, for the light distribution itself, there is a lot of logistical planning that needs to go into that. You'll see that the light is very small. It fits in a palm. But also, you need to get the lights to remote locations because the project was targeting rural off-grid communities that are in remote locations. So it requires quite a lot of resources for you to be in a position to do that. Then in the communities themselves, we had the local sales agents in the communities, like, per ward, we had at least 4 to 6 sales agents to distribute the solar lights in the communities. But also, there was a lot of training that was that we had with the local sales agents. Then for data collection, monitoring, reporting, and verification, we're using a Namene app, which was UPIA, to collect the data. We collect the client data, like, the demographics. We'll also collect the date of sale of the light, which is quite important because you start calculating your carbon reduction from that date. Then we're also collecting their location, like for verification, the third-party verifier would need that because they'll just get into your database, get a sample, and they would want to go there using the GPS coordinate to meet the people that they have sampled. So it's quite important to do that. But also, getting information about when we sold the lights was important because we wanted to honor the warranties because the lights had 2 years warranty. So if a light was malfunctioning within that period, we just replace the light. But if it was malfunctioning after 2 years, we could see that in the system. Then we wouldn't honor that, but we'll still repay it at a fee. When we're doing the replacements, we'll capture the information about what was the issue with the light and when did the light stop working. Because it means that if we are generating the reductions, if the light is no longer working, you are no longer generating reductions. So you have to capture that through the Namene app. But now the problem also here was that sometimes in most of the areas, in the rural areas, the network is not reliable. So it had also an offline version. They collect the information. When they get to a point where they can access internet, they will sync the data and will get the data here in Harare. So the lights were replacing fossil fuels, like kerosene lamps and candles, and the revenue from the carbon credits was used to reach more people with solar lights. So these are some of the benefits from the lights, saving money. As I indicated, when we got in, people were using money on a regular basis, buying kerosene lamps and candles. But because of the Namene lights, they managed to save a bit of money, which they redirected towards education and health. But also we had more than 1,700 sales agents on the part of Namene, but we also were working with private sector partners in other locations. I think among them, they had more than 700 sales agents. So in total, we had more than 2,400 sales agents on this project. So, which was a lot in terms of employment creation in the communities and also energizing the local market. But also, the lights enabled school children to study more hours in the evening. Or then there were also environmental benefits. I don't want to cover this. I've already spoken about the 92 kgs of carbon emission per light. So you can do your math for 250,000 lights, assuming that all the lights are done at least 12 months. That would be a lot of carbon reduction. But also the project was not without its own challenges. It was very difficult given the design of the project and given the type of project that we were doing to balance the need for rapid growth, but also cost containment with control. I highlighted that the project was being implemented in the communities through sales agents, and we had for Namene, we had 1,700, but also for our partners, we had 700 agents, which is 2,400 to monitor, supervise, and get all the data in time from all those people was also a challenge. Yes, we ended up employing team leaders among the sales agents and also district supervisors, regional supervisors, for us to be in a position to do that. But also to ensure proper data collection. Yes, we did trainings with our sales agents, but we would also find that once in a while, the data that we had in UPIA from certain team members was not good. So we'd go now with an after sales team that would look into the data in UPIA. And also the other platform that we're using is Monday. It will pick those errors in the system, and the after sales team will follow up and correct the information after speaking to the clients in the field. But also, the logistical cost was quite big for the project. And also the issue of handling product warranties. You would find that, because of the cost of the lights, some of the clients didn't even want their information collected because they said, if the light is only $4, why would you want to collect all this information from me? If the light is no longer working, I'll just come back and and buy another one. But for others, now, the replacement process involved again doing what we call the replacement survey, which was a number of questions that the agent has to complete just to do a replacement survey. And, for that week, they were getting very little, or what they felt was a very little money for that. So they wouldn't want to do that. So they ended up, some of them just replacing the light. But the majority of the agents were doing that. So this was another challenge. But also in Zimbabwe, given that, the carbon industry here was quite in its infancy, it was also a challenge in navigating the regulatory environment. In 2023, the government introduced what they called a climate change framework, a carbon credit framework. Then later they changed that into another statutory instrument, and now we have the new, carbon credit, climate change management, the regulations. So all those changes, they led to even this project not being certified by the government in time, because they suspended registration, and some of the projects were even suspended from operating until the government had a proper regulatory framework. But I would say currently the framework that we have looks fine, even though there are still some issues that we are still engaging the government on. But in terms of opportunities, there's a lot of opportunity for scaling this type of projects through strategic partnerships, like the private sectors, and even also, corporate social responsibility programs where companies can sponsor like a village and stuff like that. But also, working with NGOs who are into the renewable energy space. But yes, this can be done. But also, most of the private sector companies will be asking about what's in it for us. But if you look now at the cost at which the light was being sold, which is $4, which was quite a subsidized price. The light, but the actual market price for the light was between $7 and $8. So now, for us to share the $4 between ourselves, the agent, and the private sector partner, that's where sometimes there will be a challenge, because there will be need, for the proper discussion on that. But also, when Namene saw that there were all these challenges, they also introduced a broader product range where we were now distributing phone chargers, solar phone chargers, power banks, and also they are currently working on developing solar home systems. But another opportunity is that this kind of project can keep on creating more local employment opportunities when it's expanded geographically. So I would want to stop here because I think my last slide has already been covered. So I would like to stop here. Over to you, Marith.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Jackson. That was really fascinating. And it was great to learn about the amazing work that you guys are doing. So we're now moving into the question and answer session. If you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I can read them out for you. Or if you'd like to ask your questions, you can turn your camera on and wave at me, or there's a hand raising function as well that you can use to get my attention. I do see that we have one question in the chat from Fortune Germain. That's directed to you, Jackson. There's two questions here actually. Number one, are the carbon emissions associated with solar light production factored into the project design? Let's answer that first, and then we'll go over to question two.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, they are factored into the project design, because also, for us, when we are designing the project, we are looking at, the carbon emission reductions that the potential carbon emission reduction that the project can have. And yeah, these are factored into the design. And I would say, because this is already a carbon project, the basis for its design are carbon reductions. And also for you to get certified, the design certification that I talked about, you have to show that you are going to reduce emissions through the intervention. Yeah, I think we talked also about additionality. Is the project bringing in, is it a new intervention in that community? Isn't there any other project that is doing the same in the community? And, if we didn't have this project, where emission reductions are not going to happen in the short term.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And then question number 2, what was the required minimum scale to make economic sense? That's again from Fortune.
No, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Given that to develop a project itself is quite costly, I think you would need like 100,000 to 180,000 for this kind of project to develop the project. Which money would go towards your stakeholder consultations, your third-party verification at design stage. So yeah, it's quite a big investment. I think for bigger projects like the Red Plus, it will even be much more to just design the project. So you need a lot of money to just design the project to have a design certification. So because of that, now to say what is the scale of the project that would make economic sense. For our kind of project, we wanted to distribute about 1.8 million solar lights in Zimbabwe. But I think maybe the question that he's asking is mainly about what is the break-even point. I'm sorry, I had not done some math of that, but the plan for this project was to distribute 1.8 million lights on this project, or in 5 years, starting from 2023.
Wow, that's an incredible figure. Great, thank you for that. So another question here in the chat from Guguletu Tarakini. What about those that were already using solar lights and brought the lamp as an addition and were not using paraffin lamps? Hope that question makes sense.
Yeah, it's quite a good question. We also have been having that question, trying to answer that question through the project design. In doing this project, we're supposed to target the rural off-grid communities where there is no electricity. And, when we distribute the lights, we had what we called a registration survey, where we would ask the clients what is their current form of lighting. If they are using electricity, we didn't sell or distribute the lights to them. If they were already using any form of electricity, even solar, we did not sell the light to them. When we saw that much later, that many people were saying, my solar light is only for the for the residential home and not the kitchen, and they wanted the light for their kitchen. We introduced a commercial solar light that we were distributing at $8 per light. Because this one, we were not claiming any carbon credits from it. But for households that were not using any renewable energy source before, we were distributing our solar lights at $4. So we're not distributing the solar light to people who are already using renewable energy, because the requirement for the project was that we're not supposed to do that. because there was no sort of additionality, because the people were already using renewable energy. They were not using any fossil fuel based lighting products. Over to you, Martha.
Great, thank you very much for that, Jackson. So there's another question in the chat, but there's also a comment that I would just like to address, and thank you for this, Michael. Michael's asked for the recording to be sent. So the recording for yesterday's session and today's session will both be available on our website. That'll be in about a week's time, and Murat has kindly put the link to our website in the chat. So if you missed anything or you'd like to catch up, those recordings will be available there for you. And now another question from Michael. How are you dealing with homes that were using more solar lights and maybe solar lights that weren't from your project?
Okay, for those for those households that were not that already using renewable energy lighting products, we didn't target them for distribution of the solar lights. Because if we did, those the carbon credits were not going to be eligible for certification, and we're not going to get any carbon credits out of that. So, as I said, for those households that needed extra lighting on top of the renewable energy lighting product that they had, we developed a commercial light, which we were selling at a commercial price, not at a subsidized price, and we're not claiming carbon credits from those commercial lights.
Understood, thank you. Are there any other questions? Maybe anyone who'd like to raise their hand and ask their question out loud? Just while we wait for that, I was wondering, Jackson and Roman, do either of you have any comments on the other's presentation that you'd like to share?
Not from my end. Roman, do you have any additions?
No, but I'm very happy to hear that such very concrete and practical activities are implemented in Zimbabwe. It's absolutely necessary, and it really shows a good example of a convergence of positive impacts with, all of these very good socioeconomic impacts, but also a reduction of emissions. So congratulations, Jackson. I hope you will be able to target even more people in the future, but no specific question on my end.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments. I see that Kim has their hand up. Kim, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So, my question goes to Dr. Pirard. I work for a conservation project down in the Fynbos ecosystem in South Africa. And we obviously have a huge alien invasive plant problem. I understand the theory of waste biomass industries as being part of a solution. But I think our challenge when you're in very rural areas and very difficult to access areas, mountains, it's very difficult to make a market work, I guess. And I just wanted to ask if there's any, besides identifying sort of invasive plants as a waste biomass, is there any opportunity for that you know of for credit generation that's not using that mechanism?
So, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Actually, there are theory and practice. So it looks like a wonderful idea where you tick all of the boxes, but in practice, as you said, I mean, invasive alien plants and trees are in all kinds of places. They are very much scattered across the landscape, heterogeneous qualities, various densities, different access to road infrastructures, and so on and so forth. So one first reaction to what you said is you cannot have, let's say, a typical cost of biomass supplies because it is so much dependent on the sites. And unfortunately, you see lots of studies about the potential for added value industries, as they call it, using some average values for biomass supplies, and they don't represent the reality because it can be anywhere from, I don't know, like 500 rand to 2,000 rand or 3,000 rands, speaking in a local currency language. So that's the first point. Another one about your question is about, do we actually have examples of businesses that have been established using this kind of biomass? Is that correct? No. Sorry, Kim. What is the other part of your question? We can hear you.
There we go. Sorry, I just need to be allowed to be unmuted. My question is just, is there any other mechanism within any other carbon credit frameworks or standards that could address alien invasive plant removal that is not linked to the waste biomass markets creation?
I'm not sure to understand exactly what you mean, but I may try to answer and tell me if I understood properly. So, actually, a very important point is that waste biomass is not always the condition that has to be met in order to assess eligibility, right? I would say it's a dominant approach that is very logical and is applied by, I guess, the majority of standards, and especially VCS, which is a dominant one on the market. But you have other ones, as I said. So, for instance, Pure Earth has its own approach that is very specific for invasive alien trees. So basically, as you know, because as you know, in South Africa, it's you're compelled by law to actually get rid of all of these invasive trees because of this NEMBA regulation. Unfortunately, there is no law enforcement. So it's actually very rare that the law is applied in practice because there is no fines involved really, and nobody is convicted for not doing so. But still, it's kind of the many standards consider that this is the business as usual situation, that you will get rid of your trees because it's a law requirement.
Yeah.
But it actually pinpoints, I mean, it really illustrates a big flaw in the reasoning in order to assess additionality and eligibility, because law enforcement shouldn't be taken for granted. So it shouldn't be taken as a business as usual scenario in most cases. So you can assume that some of these standards are very much aware of this, but in order to promote their businesses as well and to have more projects being registered, they actually turn a blind eye and pretend to, assume that the law is going to be enforced. It's really a cat and mouse kind of game, and I don't want to be too critical in that respect, but I think there is a bit of this. So what we see with some of these approaches to assess eligibility is that people just assume in the first place that it's a good thing to get rid of these trees. So it will generate lots of positive impacts apart from the climate change mitigation impacts. So that they are like, okay, we have to support this. And we have to be maybe more lax in how we assess eligibility, because anyways, there will be lots of co-benefits. And this is really the way forward. But from a purely climate mitigation perspective, it doesn't guarantee at all that you are going to deliver. So, but also another way maybe to answer to a question, if I understood correctly, is that first of all, you can choose the standards that propose the criteria and conditions that are more suitable for your own needs, which is kind of tricky, but depending on your project, if you think you can meet this or that condition, you can actually pick the standard that is going to allow you to pick that condition in order to be assessed as eligible. But another way to answer, if I understood correctly, is that you can get some sorts of indirect subsidies in order to have a feasible project from a financial perspective. So, as you said before, so the biomass is very expensive actually to collect because it's in remote areas and so on and so forth. if ideally, and that's really what I would like to encourage the government to do, it's to benefit from public programs such as Walking for Water in order to have the trees being harvested first or logged down first by the public programs, and then you just come and collect the biomass. It obviously reduces the costs very much because you don't have to invest into the logging operations. You just come and collect the biomass. For me, this is really what should happen because the government should do something about these invasions for adaptation reasons, for environmental reasons, and so on and so forth. And then you come and collect and you give value to it. You actually make sure that this biomass is not wasted. And it can actually contribute not only to mitigation, but also to local economic development, energy substitution, and all of the things. So there should be a better coordination and articulation between different programs and sources of funding in order to make it sensible and to make it feasible. Unfortunately, and we've done, I can send me your contact because we've just published an article that analyzes in detail all of the supply chain models for this kind of biomass in South Africa. And one of the lessons that we found is that there is an absolute lack of coordination between all of these branches, between all of these departments, between all of these stakeholders in the value chains. And that's really a pity because it's a missed opportunity, because you end up in a situation where public programs may actually pay for cutting down the trees in location A, and it becomes waste biomass. Location B, you have an industry that goes and cuts down the trees at their own cost. Rather than having Walking for Water cutting down the trees in location B for the industry to come and collect, which would be a win-win situation. So this is one example of all of these missed opportunities and how we could actually improve the situation a lot. Is it an answer to your question, Kim? I know you cannot speak, so maybe you can make me a sign. Okay, cool.
Great. Thank you so much for that question, Kim. That was a really interesting discussion you just had there. Okay, I think maybe there's one more question in the chat, so I think let's do that one question and then we'll be just about time to close up. That's from Asim Mungoni. Asim Mungoni, I don't know if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question yourself, as it's quite a detailed question.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, it's just a way of trying to understand the cost of developing a project. I think the ideal route is to have communities being able to develop more projects by themselves and bringing these projects online. I was hoping to lean on our two speakers and find out on that, and how can we solve that in Zimbabwe as well as in the rest of the continent, realizing that Zimbabwe has also come up with a lot of laws to manage carbon credits. Thank you.
No, okay, thank you very much. Maybe I can come in. I think as I highlighted, the government already has a draft climate change management bill. In that bill, there are a lot of requirements for registration of a project. And also, these are the registration process. So while you are trying to register the project under a carbon registry or a carbon standard, you will also be trying to meet the requirements of the climate change management bill here in Zimbabwe. But I think what is clear in that climate change management bill is that the registration fees requirements for a project are quite prohibitive for small projects or for community projects. I think currently those fees are upwards of $20,000, to get your project registered on the Zimbabwe Carbon Registry, which is a requirement. There's no way you can run away from that. So looking at that kind of cost, I think most small projects that come from the communities will not be in a position to raise that kind of money. So as the Zimbabwe Carbon Association is something that we are planning to discuss with the government so that smaller projects can be accommodated. But I think what can also be done is for those the communities maybe to be part of a bigger program where those small projects coming from different communities can feed into a bigger project so that they can share the cost. That's the bigger program can absorb the cost of registration. But maybe what's also needed is for different stakeholders, maybe NGOs, pressure groups, to assist the communities to develop the projects and put them into like a consortium or a program type of intervention, where in the different communities they come together and form one big project. But for now, I think the current legislation is a barrier to that kind of project development from the local communities. So it's an issue that will continue engaging the government on as the Zimbabwe Carbon Association. I don't know whether I answered you.
Thank you, Jackson. Roman, do you have any comments?
Yeah, maybe just to add a couple of things. So first of all, it's a very tricky issue because what everybody needs to understand is that there is a trade-off between integrity of the carbon credits and feasibility of the carbon projects. As a matter of fact, there is a reason why it's become extremely complex and difficult to validate, to get a carbon project validated, because you have so many conditions to meet, so many verifications to be put in place, and so on and so forth. Why? Because you want to ensure that there is integrity with the carbon credits, there is credibility with the carbon credits, that they will actually contribute fully to climate change mitigation. So, leakage, additionality, all of these considerations have to be put in the equation and need to be verified. But it impedes feasibility because it leads to lots of costs of designing and implementing a project. And as Jackson can testify, it's kind of a nightmare in the end to develop and implement successfully a carbon project. I've come across many people who had plans to have these carbon projects, and it's such a long road. There are so many things to do, from assessing feasibility to actually developing and implementing the project, investing the money, and so on and so forth. And there is absolutely no guarantee that it will lead to issuance of carbon credits eventually. And that may happen many years later. Who knows about the value of carbon credits? Because this is something that many people tend to forget. If you start a project now, you may have carbon credits being issued many years from now, let's say 5 years. Who knows about the value of a carbon credit in 5 years from now? Maybe the market will crash and collapse. Maybe it will thrive. Who knows? It's a big bet. So the costs are for sure, but the revenues are very uncertain. But once again, if you want to simplify the processes and the rules, then you may actually lose on the integrity side. And then you open the door to many credits that won't actually represent real climate change mitigation impacts. It's difficult to find a solution. But if you want to have an idea of the costs, so I've got some figures in front of me right now. The registration fees can be up to $22,000. Just the fees for registering your project. Then the fees incurred when the project issues carbon credits, because you want to verify, you want to pay for verification, audit fees, and so on, $20,000, and so on and so forth. Then you have to pay tax on your carbon credits because it's a source of revenues, and so on and so forth. So think more than twice before you start the process. It's difficult.
Great, thank you for that. I see that we now are out of time, but I think this was a really, really incredible discussion, really fascinating. Thank you so much to all of our wonderful audience members for joining. And of course, thank you so much, Ramar and Jackson, for your time and your expertise. Two very different sort of presentations within one, and I think that led to the interesting discussion. As always, this talk will be available in about a week's time on our website, so please do maybe go back and have a look at it. I know there were some maybe more complicated themes that were explored. I see that Moret is just putting up our key learning outcomes there for you to just have a quick reread through. And then, yes, I want to wish everyone a really great evening and afternoon, and thank you very much for joining.